Welcome, dear friends from all the corners of the world to Annot's webinar, Navigating Ivy Leagues. This is a convergence where aspirations find inspiration. Today, our mission is very clear: to light the path to success by distilling the invaluable insights of our esteemed Harvard alumni who have triumphed in the Ivy League experience. My name is Marshall Bizure. I am a co-founding director and the vice president of finance at Annot Incorporated. I'm currently sitting in Orlando, Florida. I'm also a proud graduate of Harvard University Kennedy School, class of 2015. So my journey from the humble villages of Marondera in Zimbabwe, where I once worked as a toilet cleaner, to finance my way through high school to the prestigious halls of Harvard, speaks volume about the power of determination and support. I was born into a poor but loving family. We often celebrated eating 2 meals per day because eating or having 1 meal per day was actually a cherished milestone. Today, we stand united with over 200 participants who registered for this webinar. They are from all over the world, from Africa to Asia, Europe to Australia and North America. We have countries represented from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Nigeria, India, Germany, Europe, some European countries, to say just a few. So we are here to uncover the wisdom shared by our distinguished Harvard alumni panel. So these individuals embody resilience, tenacity, and an unwavering pursuit of excellence. They are ready to guide and inspire us on our respective journeys. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our founder and president, who is also today's moderator, Chieza Juru, a symbol of leadership, a chartered accountant, and a distinguished graduate of Harvard University, class of 2023. Chieza's commitment to nurturing talent globally resonates deeply with Annot's mission to empower individuals to reach their fullest potential. Welcome everyone to this transformative experience. Over to you, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marshall, for that kind introduction. And thank you for sharing your personal story. It is so touching, and it shows us that all things are possible. It's an absolute honor to have you all, our special guests. Thank you so much for connecting. Many years ago, I had a dream to pursue my education at a top institution, Harvard University. So many people have helped me to realize that dream, sharing their resources, time, and information. My friend Kudzai Makomba told me about the MPA program at Harvard Kennedy School. And she said, Chieza, this program would be so ideal for you. Dalumuzi, who is one of our panelists today, helped me to believe that I could actually go to Harvard, and he supported me throughout my application process. And Marshall, whom we've just heard from, was the first person who received us when we got here. He received us at the airport, and he bought us our first meal as we arrived here. And all these taught me that when doors are opened for you, you need to do the same for others. I quickly realized the unique opportunity that exists for Africa through the African diaspora. And while for a long time we have viewed migration of people as brain drain, we now have an opportunity to turn that to brain gain by tapping into the skills and resources of the African diaspora to create the Africa that we desire. And with this in mind, I teamed up with my colleagues, Marshall and Kenneth, and we co-founded Annot Inc. So Annot is a US nonprofit organization that focuses on youth-led collaboration between the United States and Africa through education, youth empowerment, entrepreneurship, and diaspora engagement. Annot means light. Annot is all of us who are here today, who have joined us today. It is the light that we spark on each other when we collaborate, when we share our knowledge, and when we share our resources. It is the light that we shine on Africa, a continent once perceived a dark continent. And we do this by leveraging our people, our young people, the African diaspora, the global community. And so we're gathered today for the official launch of Annot's programs, starting with our education portfolio. Today, we launch a webinar series, Navigating US Education. The United States is renowned for its top-tier universities and exceptional education system, which offers promising career prospects. So the Navigating US Education series aims to leverage the African diaspora's expertise to provide assistance to African students who are aspiring to study in the US. Today, we're starting with the Ivy Leagues, and we're going to continue with other universities in webinars to come. For talented students in Africa who have never ventured beyond the continent, the idea of studying in the US may seem a distant and abstract, but just like it was for me years ago. But we are grateful that we have living examples like our panelists who have joined us today to showcase how such aspirations can be realized through sharing their own journeys and knowledge with us. And with that, I now have the pleasure to introduce our panelists. Please help me welcome Adora Ugu, joining us all the way from Nigeria. Adora is a phenomenal woman. I met her last year during the Harvard Africa Trek. Adora has a master in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School and a master's from the London School of Economics. Adora is currently a technical advisor to the CEO in a government organization focusing on finance, investment promotion, and energy policy. Our second panelist, Simba Gandari. Simba holds a Master of Education, I love that, from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And in recognition to his dedication to historically marginalized and underserved communities, Simba was awarded a Community Leadership Award by President Obama's Council on Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition. Simba is currently a program advisor at the Harvard Business School. Our third panelist, Dalumuzi. Dalumuzi is the founder and CEO of Notor Inc., Africa's first licensed and regulated alternative credit bureau platform. Prior to this, Dalumuzi served as Group Chief of Staff at Econet, a Pan-African telecoms and tech company with investments and operations in over 29 countries. Dalumuzi studied at Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford University. And our final panelist, Tatenda Mujeni. Tatenda is a global health, equity, and health systems strengthening strategist with over 10 years experience working in global health spanning over multiple countries. Tatenda is currently a Doctor of Public Health candidate at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and holds a Master of Public Health degree from the Columbia University. What an incredible panel, and thank you for joining us. Welcome, everybody. You look amazing. And we're gonna kick off by just like finding out from each one of you what inspired you to study at Harvard University. Was it easy? What kind of support or help, if any, did you get? And I want to start with you, Adora. Over to you, Adora.
Okay, hi everyone. It's great to be here. Greetings from Abuja, Nigeria, where the weather is 40 degrees and counting, climbing. It's really hot here. Thanks for having me, Chietza. This is, and the team, Marshall, this is a very important topic. It's something I'm really passionate about. And Chietza, we've talked about this, just sort of looking for ways to scale this. And this webinar is just one of those great opportunities. And I hope it doesn't end here. So what inspired me? Well, right now, as she said, I work in Nigeria in the government, public sector, and I see every day how decisions that we make at work affect the lives of Nigerians. As regulators in the energy space, well-designed regulations that promote competition and consumer protection and environmental sustainability and much needed energy infrastructure is hinged on great policies. I used to work in the private sector as well. I moved to this public sector, very difficult transition, different work cultures, and a very different approach to problem solving. So even though I had, I have 3 kids, I'm married, and I had worked for a long time, I didn't want to go back to school after 13 years of doing my master's program. To do another master's, and I didn't want a 2-year MBA, and I really wanted to stay in the government space. So I started doing a lot of research. I spoke to a lot of people. I was tunnel visioned and focused on going to Harvard. So when I saw that 1-year master's program, like, perfect, this is mid-career, it's just what I need. And I wanted to refresh. I wanted to understand where the world was heading to around policy implementation. I just thought, oh, this is perfect. I'm working on all these policies, the gas policy in Nigeria, the petroleum industry bill. And I wanted to get a better sense of what drafting to implementation looks like in a different space. And if you're African and indeed Nigerian, you'll understand how difficult implementation is of any policies. Now, we have great policies written down, but implementation is really a problem. So I just thought, okay, this is what I wanted. And I pushed, got a lot of help along the way. I will discuss that later on. But yeah, this really was my vision. And I encourage everybody to just apply if you feel like it and if you need to. So yes.
Amazing.
Chetza?
Thank you. Adora says just apply. Please take note of that, because sometimes it's just difficult to even start because you don't actually see yourself going there. But we have people like her here encouraging us. Let's move on to you, Dalimusi. Tell us what your journey was and what inspired you to join Harvard.
Great. Thank you so much, Yedza. First of all, thank you for the opportunity, and really wonderful to see so many people turn up for the webinar. It shows, Harvard was going to be receiving at least another 100 additional applications they otherwise would not have received if it wasn't for the webinar. So really excited about this. So I attended Harvard for my undergrad. So I was there for 4 years in the years 2009 to 2013. I have a very fascinating story about how I got to Harvard, incredibly improbable. This is not to say I'm about to preach, but it wouldn't have been possible without the grace of God when I sort of like connect the dot backwards. And where it all started was when I was 15. I was at a government boarding school in Matabeleland South in Zimbabwe called Mzingwane. And the extent of my ambition really was to go to the local university called NUST and study actuarial science. I believed that, if I did that, like that would be ultimate success. And I know a lot of NUST actuaries. They're really incredible people. It's an amazing program. But this is just to say that my sense of possibility was limited to the environment that I was in. When I was 15, I had a friend who went to a debate competition in the US and came back and say that he had got a scholarship to go to Harvard. And that's the first time I thought it was possible to actually get to Harvard. And so the first thing really for me was expanding my sense of possibility. Like, Harvard was not an option. It's just something that I knew was there. It's a school where, best in the world, ranked #1 most of the time, but I just didn't see myself there. But when somebody who I knew and was my friend said they'd got in and they'd got a scholarship, I was like, okay, so it's possible. Like, I know this guy, we're always cracking jokes in, our local language in Ndebele. This guy is silly. He's smart, yes, but like, he's a normal person, he's not like a nerd wearing those funny glasses and just like always reading books. Like, it's a really normal person. And so it made me believe that it was possible. Fast forward, I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to go to a school in Swaziland. I did absolutely everything that I could because I wanted to. I started student organizations. I wrote for the local newspaper. And, you know, when it was now time to prepare to go to Harvard, I had quite a lot that I could write in my personal statement and share about myself and, you know, what I could contribute to a place like Harvard. And I think I'll just close off by saying, you know, in summary, one, it exists in the realm of possibility. People get admitted to Harvard every year, and, you know, it could be possible. It's not just Harvard, other Ivy Leagues. The second is you probably have a really wonderful, compelling story that adds something to the experience of other students at Harvard. And it's not just about what Harvard gives you, but it's about what you will also contribute, you know, to Harvard or wherever you eventually apply. And so, you know, your dreams are valid, if I can say that. And, you know, you just apply. I think that might be the theme for this webinar, just apply. Thank you.
I love that. Just apply, and that, you know, normal people go to Harvard. It's refreshing, you know, to hear that. And I also love how you spoke about the preparation, you know, that you took in order for you to get to that point. And so I'll come over to you, Tatenda, to hear your story. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Chiedza and the Annot team. And I'm grateful to go after Dalmuzi because it is a story of normal people. So my experience and my journey is a little bit different. I went to school in Zimbabwe and I was an okay student, maybe average or just above average, but I didn't do what I needed to do. Dalmuzi, I was not writing the stories in the local newspaper. I wasn't starting student organizations. I was just chilling. I was just being a student. And that did not prepare me, for instance, to apply for an Ivy League institution at the time when I was supposed to apply when applying for colleges. But I remember in one of my our prize giving days at St. John's High School in Harare, one of the board members was like, he came from Yale University, and he was talking about just his experience and just how that was for him in broadening his own horizon. And his children were in my high school, and I was like, I would love to go to an Ivy League university. It started off as Yale University, but it broadened to an Ivy League university. Zimbabwe, as you can see from Dalmuzi, from Chiedza, there's very excellent students who had done very well in their A-levels, in their O-levels, and I wasn't necessarily that person. So I guess I go back to that normal people can make it to Harvard University. And I did okay. And I was like, what are the options that would work for me? I still want to go to the US. There was a United States Education Center in Harare, and I worked through it and looked at colleges and universities that I qualify for and that would nurture me. I ended up at the best decision of my life in a historically Black college and university called Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina. And for me, I think that set me apart for preparation for Ivy League. And Dalmuzi, when I arrived at Bennett is when I started preparing. It's like, okay, you said you wanted to go this. How do you position yourself to go to these Ivy League institutions? It was the professors who were incredible and were always motivating and saying, oh, these are the opportunities you can go to, using that opportunity of being in a smaller institution, having one-on-one opportunities with professors to get those opportunities to intern at the Ivy League. So I spent a semester at Yale. I spent my summers at the Ivy Leagues when I was there. So it was like positioning myself and preparing myself when I was there to get me to that Ivy League institution. And I think for me, I'm excited for what Annot is doing for all students, those who are exceptional students and deserve to be there in any of these, and they can definitely qualify. But for those, maybe you might not have been as exceptional, but you've got what it takes. And you can turn around and we can opportunity. So I can share more. I'm excited to share my journey that it is possible, and 2 Ivy Leagues and continuing. And it's when I did arrive, I didn't feel any different. I feel like I fit in and I'm doing well here. So I'm excited to be here and learn and share with everybody else.
Amazing, Tatenda. I like that, you know, you've like broadened it, you know, it's not just for the academically exceptional. Even if you don't feel like I'm that academically exceptional, there is an opportunity for you. Thank you for bringing that angle. I also heard you speak about going to an HBCU. Our webinar next month is actually going to feature HBCUs, because it's not just about Harvard. There's so many incredible institutions that will help you, you know, start out your journey here in the United States. So thank you for mentioning that. We'll move over to you, Simba. I'm excited to hear your story.
Yes, thank you so much. We did not rehearse any of these answers, but it's so interesting how we all have similar themes in our stories and our backgrounds. And I love that just apply, because that is honestly the truth. When I was dreaming of studying in America, I was dreaming of Los Angeles or New York or something like that. But I ended up in rural South Carolina in a community college. And that is where I got my associate's degree. So the journey to Harvard has taken 17 years. But I am here. I just graduated last year, and now I work for Harvard's Business School. And then talking about exceptional students, I was not one of those as well. I skated by my O-levels, my A-levels. Even at the community college, I don't think I ever got a full set of straight A's, but I was able to put together an application, and that confidence came from someone else. Someone was like, Simba, you have the experience, you have the knowledge, you have the tools to get into Harvard. You just need to apply. And I said, oh, I don't think so. He said, look, it's $85. It's $85 for the application fee. It's going to be an essay, 1,500 words. I've heard you talk. You can put 1,500 words together easily. Let's do it. Just apply. And at worst case, you've lost $85. And then there's recommendation letters and all those things, but you're not writing those. So I looked at the opportunity cost, and I looked at the true cost of applying, and it wasn't that much. And the worst they can say is no. And then next year you come back and you apply again if you need to. So just that was my journey. It came from others. It came from others pushing me. And I'm really glad we're having this space. And thank you all, Chiedza, Marshall, Kenneth, for setting this up. This is amazing. And I love that theme. Just apply.
I love this. I absolutely love just apply. That's the hashtag, for Annot. And thank you, Simba, for also just sharing your story. I like how you say the worst that anybody can say is no. So never stop an opportunity, for yourself. And if they say no, you can pick yourself up, and then you can try again. And I'm going to come back to you, Adora. Here's one platform we're creating to share information. I think from listening to all your stories, I can see a commonality where somebody gave you information, or you saw somebody that represented you, and that was, something that gave you the courage to try it out. And it's evident that many students miss out on opportunities due to lack of information. And you are the president of the Harvard Kennedy Alumni Association. In Nigeria, you're positioned to try and facilitate opportunities for deserving students. What steps do you think we should be taking, both at the level that you serve or even as individuals, in order to ensure that, this knowledge gap is dealt with?
Hi, Chiedza, and thanks for that. So yes, guys, great stories. And I mean, let me just say this before I start. The stories are at different entry points and different levels, right? So you have the undergraduate stories and the grad school stories. And I think that's what makes this webinar so unique, because everybody here has a story to tell at that level. At the Alumni Association in Nigeria, it's something that why I even volunteered for that role is because of this, right? People don't feel they're good enough to get in. People don't know how, and they don't know where to start, right? People don't even think about, like in my case, I had heard about Ivy Leagues. I had wanted to go. My brain is wired that way to always aim really high. And then if you fall, you don't fall too low. So I didn't apply thinking I was going to get in, but I put in every single thing into the application. And that really is where I'm going to go to with closing this gap. I think it's a personal responsibility. I think you need to want to have to find that information, do the research, find the people, and close your gap. So let's not give that responsibility to anybody else but the applicant. And that really helps. The other thing, of course, is look for information from everywhere. LinkedIn is a great resource because you can literally search the school you want to go to and find alumni who have gone there and reach out to them. Another great resource that we have used to help students from the Alumni Association here is reaching out to the alumni offices in the schools, right? So for the Kennedy School Alumni Office, they would actually connect you with people on the ground in your area. And they also have information sharing sessions where you can get a lot of information about the program you're applying to, have the opportunity to question alumni and staff, and then get some advice as well on course selections and things like that. So I think that reach out to alumni associations for the schools that you're interested in, and they will share information with you around interest groups and things like that. Essay reviews is also where people have a lot of gaps, right? They don't know who to go to help them look at their essays or review the essays. It's very important, your personal statement, because you really have to tell your story. And I think we're going to get to that. Tell a compelling story. It doesn't have to be a sad story. It just really has to be a great, compelling story around who you are, so that you can come from a 2D piece of paper to a 3D person, right? Because these guys are sitting all the way over there. They don't know who you are, you know. You really have to figure out how to tell a compelling story in 1,500 words. And I think that, you know, this is also very important. You know, I don't know if we're going to go over to the financial aid piece or talking about support on finances later on, but I think that we can do more, even as an alumni association. I've had a few alumni, for example, literally pick a student and sponsor that student to go to school. And that's a big deal because we know how much we're talking about here in the Ivy Leagues, right? So it's at an individual level. I supported 2 people this application cycle. One of them got in, one of them didn't, you know. So it was sort of bittersweet, you know, but all things work out because, again, just apply and you're good enough. So yeah, that's really it.
Amazing.
Yes.
Adora, I love how you gave back the responsibility, to the
Yeah.
people who want to get into the Ivy Leagues or into US colleges. Because if you're also not being proactive, the information will not just come. And it's amazing
Yes.
to hear that you supported people, personally who have been admitted. So you're just an example of, when we look at ourselves as alumni, that responsibility as well that we have, to help those who are coming after us. And as I, move over to Simba, I do know that you have personally also helped a lot of students who have been placed into top universities, not just Harvard, but I know that you've helped a couple of people who've been admitted to Harvard as well. What advice do you have for African students or just students in general that are navigating the application process to Ivy Leagues? From your experience, helping several students, what are these typical institutions really looking for in a candidate? When you're thinking about practically, what do I have to have, in that road in order for me to, be a good candidate for these schools?
Great question. So 2 main pieces I want to highlight for navigating the process is that each school has its own formula. So my advice is find that formula and find that formula and then adjust your application accordingly. Then as much as you can, you want to send a warm application to that school. So we'll start with finding that formula. A lot of these institutions will have admissions webinars. That is a great source of where you can find out what are the admissions officers. Those are the people that are going to look at your application. What are they looking for, right? So if we compare Harvard's Graduate School of Education versus Stanford's education program, they're looking for different types of candidates, right? So the admissions webinars is one place, but doing deep research, Adora was talking about that research on the websites, research on LinkedIn, using alumni, you really have to do that deep research to get the information needed specifically for your program, right? That's how you truly stand out as a candidate versus those that maybe went on the website, took some keywords, put it in there, or maybe went on ChatGPT and used a few general words. No, we need to really click on those hyperlinks, learn about the program, learn about the classes that you're going to take. This is what really differentiates you from those. And then in terms of characteristics, those are going to depend on the program. On this call, we've got the Kennedy School represented, we've got the college represented, we've got the public health school represented, so many schools, and they all are looking for different types of candidates, but have different characteristics they're looking for. And you can only fully understand that if you've done that research. Websites, LinkedIn, webinars, that is really the true thing I want people to walk away with is this process takes time. We might have all come from different ability levels, but everyone on this call took time to really do that research and work hard towards applying. So let's make sure we do that.
Amazing. And Simba, you're really highlighting the importance of, preparation. It takes time. You need to research, you need to really dig into what each particular school is looking at. So that there's work that needs to happen there. And I love the idea of a warm application. I think that's an important point, for you to start actually engaging in different ways with the institution you want to go to, participating in their webinars, etc. And I'm going to move to you, Dalumuzi. You were admitted to prestigious institutions like Harvard College and then Cambridge and then Oxford. And just drawing from your experience, I know for a lot of students who want to get into college, they worry about SATs, and just also other people who want to get into graduate school, worry about GMATs and GREs. Please tell us just, any impactful advice on that preparation around that, just as well as just digging a little bit deeper into the issue of application essays that really portray the experiences and aspirations of students and position them well.
Great, no, sure. Thank you very much to respond to that. So I'll start off with the question around SATs, GMATs, GREs, and application essays. So starting off with the SATs. So if you're going to be applying to the Harvard College as an undergraduate, you'll have to write SATs. And a lot of the times, if you're applying to a graduate program, you'll have to do the GMAT or the GRE. GMAT if you're doing sort of like to a business school, for example, GRE, graduate school more generally. The one thing that for me really, so starting with the SATs, I just had to practice a lot. I know some universities now sort of have SATs as optional, but I encourage if you're an undergraduate student and are going to be applying to the college, to definitely write the SATs and aim for a very good grade. And SATs are very much like exams. You just have to practice a lot. I wrote my SATs right in the middle of writing. I didn't do A-level, I did IB. So right in the middle of IB exams. And I probably exerted myself more on the SATs than I did on my sort of like IB exam prep. And part of that is because how the SATs are structured, sort of for example, their math, how they assess for math is different from how A-level math is assessed or how IB math is assessed. So you have to really understand, and you can only do that from practice. I remember the first SAT math exam that I took, I was like an A student in math. The first SAT practice exam that I took, I probably got like, I think they were out of 800. My score was probably like, I don't know, 400, 450, etc. But then I ended up with a score of 780, if I'm not mistaken. And the difference between starting off like the first time, I was like, oh, I've done math and I'm good at it. And so obviously I'm just going to kill these questions. But how they ask the questions and what they're looking for is different. And so you have to really understand that. And then the second aspect is time pressure. I started off practicing for my SATs, just like trying to finish a whole exam with no time pressure. And closer to the exam, I would do my practice exams under exam conditions. So I think the SAT literally is like a 4-hour, 5-hour exam, and I would do it in 4 to 5 hours. So that by the time I'm getting to the exam room, I've literally practiced this 10 times and I'm not worried about a lot of things, because those exams are about the questions themselves, but also about how you approach the exam. And there's exam strategy when it comes to this. At some point, you just decide, you know what, I'll stop answering the questions. I've answered enough of them. I'll move on to the next section. So that's important. And I think it's the same with the GMAT and the GRE, which is lots of practice, understand exam strategy, and practice under exam conditions. And then with application essays, there's a lot that I can say, but I think Adora and Simba have shared a lot. I'm sure Tatenda will come in. The one thing that I will share is, from a college perspective, the admission rate is less than 5%, maybe 4%, and they admit about 2,000 students every year, which means they get 100,000 applications. So admissions officers, they might not read 100,000 admissions essays, but they're reading a lot of essays. And when I advise people, you have to share your story in a unique way. But I sort of like make this concrete and say, imagine the admissions officer is reading your personal statement it's the very last personal statement they are reading for the day. And they've had a very long day. These admissions essays are read in the middle of winter, and it's snowing and cold outside, and they're very tired. They just want to go home. And I always add another bit to say they had a very big fight with their partner the previous day, and they were just like screaming at each other in the morning. So like your admissions essay is being read at the worst possible time, right? How are you going to write an essay which at the end of the day, it's cold, they're hungry, they're tired, they're nervous about this fight that has to continue when they get home. But when they read your essay, they're like, wow, we need this kid to, we need to give this place to this person. And I think if you solve for that moment in writing your application essay, you just approach it differently. And the other thing is application essays are written over multiple drafts. I think I wrote maybe 10, 12 drafts before my final version, which was in itself reviewed by at least a half dozen people. So it's a process. It was a 3-4 month process to write that application essay. I didn't write it overnight. And that's just how it is. So as much as you prepare for the SATs, GMATs, GREs, it's the same with the application essay. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
That's very helpful, Dalamuze. I love that, picture you painted, of the worst kind of scenario that your essay is being reviewed. It just shows that you really need to put your best foot forward. And, I have experienced very candid feedback. Dalamuze reviewed my essays, crossed out probably half, if not everything I'd written, and really grilled me. When I was, applying, I was like, oh, Lord Jesus, what is this? But yeah, it takes a lot of work. It takes so much preparation. So thank you for sharing that. And I would like to just move over to you, Tatinda. I know Adora started to speak to us about, the issue around funding. And, I know it's one of the big issues for students who are talented and who want to access opportunities, but do not have the funding. So I would like to just hear the strategies or your own experience in terms of how you get funding opportunities, scholarships or financial aid, and just any other barrier that you can think of that, students typically face that prevents them from accessing opportunities.
Thanks so much, Chieza. So funding is one of the biggest deterrents for people to even dream about attending Ivy Leagues or universities in the US in the first place. And it's not going to be easy. And I think it goes back to what everybody has to say. It is just being persistent. And I think that's my very first point. Is being persistent in following up on what funding opportunities exist at the institution that you're applying for. And that's, for me, it was both when I was applying for Columbia University and for this Doctor of Public Health program at Harvard. For graduate programs, I believe it might even be more difficult to get funding if you don't have fellowships. And for most places, there isn't. They just tell you this is what the bill is, and you have to navigate it. And so don't stop from there. Like for me, what has helped is pushing back with the institutions. What do you have available? And one thing I tell people is even when you're asking for additional funding, so I will, like that's my story for Columbia University, was you've gotten to this program, it costs like $60-something thousand a year. Congratulations, we'll give you $5,000. I'm like, okay, great, thank you so much. But I don't have anything else. Like there's no way, I'm just out of college. I don't have all this other funding that's there. But it wasn't just a pushback to say, oh, thank you very much. Do you have any additional funding? It's like, how do I position myself to request for this additional funding? That comes from research. To say, I went on their website for everything I qualified for. I told them I applied for this scholarship. I applied for this funding. You say for international students, go to World Health Organization. I've gone to all those places. These are the responses that I've received. These are the things that are in place. This is the funding that you've given me. And as a student myself, I don't have much funding, but I've got something to offer. So people want to help people who have helped themselves as well. And they like this initiative, this self-initiative. I mean, I believe that's what it was. And I kept on pushing back with that. I can offer 3,000, I can offer 2,000. So when I talk with students when they're starting and say, I want to study, to say, what do you have? I say, I've got nothing at all. It's like, no, go search somewhere. Go to your local churches, go to your family, have something to put on even your financial aid application to say, how much can you offer? Sometimes it's being bold. I don't even have it, but I'm going to put 10,000. And sometimes with like several students, international students who are requesting for funding, that might actually maybe set you up apart to say maybe she might have additional funding. The gap that we're going to be looking to support is this amount of money. So start from there. I think that it's going to be important. External funding is always important. The school might have funding, but there's sometimes some external funding opportunities. Talking to the Alumni Association. So once you do your research, I appreciated what every one of the panelists said here is do your research. And doing your research is saying which institution is best for me. Harvard might be great, but the School of Public Health, they don't have funding for international students. But if I go to this other institution, to Yale, they've got these scholarships. I mean, there's going to be so many things that align, but it also goes to looking for funding as well. And while you're there, there's also, all the time, there's always the students who are already there to say, how do you reach out to Chieza, reach out to Simba to say, how did you do it? How did you navigate the system? And then they can help you. But again, it's always starting from somewhere. And this goes, you're talking about funding, but it also goes, and Adora talked about it from the beginning, it's not even, I've had so many people like, oh, you're in school, I want to come, can you tell me how to do it? Do what? From where? So do your basic research in the beginning. These are the institutions I want to go to. This is what I want to do. This is the research that I have, and this is the gaps that I have. Can you help me with that part? And sometimes with the funding, it'll be like helping to navigate people and in supporting in those areas. And I know you asked about funding, but it also goes to how you help somebody. For me, it was like, I'll be happy to navigate, help you to push to someone who can help you with your personal statement with other areas if you have brought something in the beginning. So put something on the table. I think that will be my first thing, and be persistent. Like I'm telling you, like I'll just give you an example. This past, I was talking to a friend right now. I just applied for a research grant, and I was like, barely qualify for this grant. Like, why did you apply? I'm like, well, I tailored it to as much as what they need, and I hope for the best. You'll be surprised of how many of I qualify. I got scholarships I don't qualify for before because I keep on pushing, navigating. So be persistent. Don't stop at it. Even when you get into the school, continue going. I think that's the advice I would give.
That's amazing advice, Tatenda. Be persistent, start somewhere, and do the research. And like while we are on that topic, I would like to just bring this question to Adora, because I think one of the issues when you're applying for financial aid is you think that I really have to show my need, how great my need is. And that was my initial thinking. And yet some of these financial aids or scholarship or fellowships are really looking at merit. So how do you balance, you know, really showing your experience without pigeonholing yourself, you know, and also being able to position yourself for financial aid that's also looking at merit versus a huge emphasis on the need?
Okay, hi, thanks everyone. Great, great question, Chieza, and also thanks, Dalumuzi. I laughed when you talked about the person who's just in a bad mood and reading your essay, but we're Africans, we pray before that person reads the essay. We pray for that person to be in a good mood. And Tatenda, you talked about really just pushing and keep on applying, whether you qualify for that aid or not. You know, so I think it's important to share your story. I think that we've all talked about that here. Especially our stories, maybe, for example, as an African or an Asian, these stories always give you an opportunity to showcase your leadership, your resilience, your growth. And when you highlight these things and emphasize, depending on where you're applying to, what course you're applying to, there's certain things that you can use your story to emphasize. So you can emphasize leadership qualities and your involvement in leadership roles, like some of what Dalumuzi did before he got into college, and also your community projects that you've taken part in. You can also like articulate your personal narrative. How do you want to show up? What do we call it again? Is it the 5-minute elevator pitch or 15-second? Actually, you don't have up to 5 minutes. But when you're writing these essays, you really want to showcase some of those things. It's a university, it's a college, right? So you have to showcase your academic achievements, your work achievements as well. Dalumuzi talked about the SSATs and and the SATs and practicing and practicing and practicing, you know, show your research project, any coursework you've done. These are very, very important things, especially when you're trying to navigate between merit-based scholarships, which is where you really need to show a lot of that leadership, academic, versus need-based, where you're looking at your, where they're looking at really your finances, right? So for example, for Americans, they have FAFSA, which is a free financial aid where you can apply in different categories at different interest rates. And yet I got a FAFSA loan and when I applied, but I also, and Tatenda has alluded to this, between don't think just about institutional aid opportunities, think externally. I pushed so hard to there's a fund called the Petroleum Technology Development Fund in Nigeria. And some of those funds will give you a full ride to any school or certain schools, depending on the course you want to go and take, right? And they will sponsor you end to end. And I think these are some of the things that you should also look in your countries, in your local governments. They have pools of funds in country, even within your organization, right? So for example, I got leave with pay, study leave with pay from my organization when I was leaving. So there are certain pools of funds that you can access just so that you're not relying really on the institution, you know. But luckily, American institutions in particular have huge pools of funds. These are rich schools, right? So as Atenda said, you have to keep pushing. The money is there somewhere. Don't give up. Apply for the fellowships, apply for the scholarships, which you qualify for, and talk to people about how they did it and keep getting your essays. My essay was reviewed, Dalumuzi, maybe like 20 times. I'm like, I don't even know how to write. I don't know what to say to these guys. You know, what makes me special here? You know, what makes me stand out, you know? So, but I think above all, be authentic and be real, because they really can tell, right? If your application lacks authenticity. So yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Amazing. I love how you've just expanded, you know, the resources that are available, because sometimes you're just thinking in one way. So it's push, apply, and really look broadly, even in your country, your organization, as you think about, you know, resources. And I want to come to you, Simba, on one important topic, which is the issue of recommendation letters. They play such a significant, you know, role in the application process. But sometimes people just overlook their significance or just the right strategy. How can candidates ensure that their recommenders effectively highlight their strengths and their achievements as they're thinking about recommendation letters?
Great question. I'd actually start a step before that, finding the right recommenders. So prior to Harvard, I used to just find people that I had worked with, the last 3 employers, right? Can I get the CEO to write me a letter? And then that was going to look good enough for my application. But that's not the case. What you need to do is truly understand, what is the admissions committee looking for, right? And that's very specific to each program. And what I found, a tangible example, what I found at Harvard was they wanted one of those recommendation letters to be from a previous professor or a previous teacher, to showcase that I had the academic ability to keep up with the other Harvard students, right? Especially for someone who did not have a whole lot of A's and a high GPA. It was important that my recommendation letter came from a professor that knew about my academic ability and could say, Simba will contribute XYZ to the class, and he is a diligent student and all of those things, right? And then I want to go back to a quick point about the warm application, because you can be exceptional. You could have the exceptional grades, the exceptional SAT and GRE and recommendation letter, but sometimes it just comes to tilting things to your favor. And I didn't expand on the point about the warm application, so I want to take some time to do that right now, which is finding someone within that admissions team or within that college that has influence over a decision-making process. It'll be harder at the college, but these other graduate schools, it's a little bit easier. And what you do is you attend a session maybe, and then you find their email, and then you follow up, right? A simple follow-up can be like, Dear Amy, I really liked your point about XYZ. I'd love to have a deeper conversation on it. I know you're super busy, but if you have 10 to 20 minutes for a call, I'd love to chat, right? And then now when you do apply, when they see that, they will see Simba Gandari applied, and they will maybe favoritively look at your application and be like, you know what, I understand. Even on points that might not even be making sense anymore, maybe they'll be like, we give him the benefit of the doubt because we know who he is as a candidate. And that tilts that to your favor. But going back to recommendation letters, you will know about who to get as a recommender when you put that in. And then when you've done that, make sure your story ties in. What the recommendation letter says should tie into a piece of your application. And the whole thing is viewed from the committee as an entire, it's all together. So we've got to make sure that they are not talking about something you did 5 years ago, but you haven't mentioned it in your application, in your essay, in anything. It needs to all tie together because they're looking at you as a full package, and your grades, your letters, your application essays, all of those things are going to be looked at specifically. So make sure you are tying those in and making sure that the recommenders are also tying in the pieces you specifically want to be highlighted.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Good for people to start, thinking ahead when it comes to recommendations, and make sure you have, the right portfolio of recommenders. I can see that we have a lot of questions in our Q&A. If you have any questions, keep placing them in there. If our panelists have time, they might respond to some of them in the Q&A by typing, but we are going to open the Q&A section shortly, and we will be reading some of your questions and getting them to respond to those. I want to come to you, Tatenda. You are currently a PhD student, at the Harvard Public School of Health. And I want you to just share information or just guidance to aspiring PhD students. The starting point might be different, for a graduate student. Where do you even start? And also, is funding an issue, at that level? Or what kind of issues do you deal with, at that level?
Thanks, Chiedza. So I can say I'm doing a DRPH, so it's a Doctor of Public Health, which is also great when you're doing the research and seeing where the entry point of going into a graduate level to do a doctorate level degree. So mostly PhD degrees are more research intensive, and you're probably focusing in going to academia. Some of them want to go tenure track, and the other degree options for the School of Education will be an EdD. In the School of Public Health is a DRPH, which is more practice-based degree. There is research component. You're going to have to do research because you're doing a doctorate level degree, but it's very different. So understanding what you want to get from this degree. So for some, yes, you want to go into academia or you want to do research. And for many cases, that starts, I would say, that for all of these degrees, it's to begin with the end in mind, right? So I come in into my program, even when I'm doing undergraduate program, is understanding that I want to do a PhD program. When I started my undergraduate, I was a biology major. I had two potential tracks: going to veterinary medicine, which I was passionate about, or doing a PhD in biomedical sciences. And when I came in, there were international students and professors who say, well, I came to a very strong institution. It's small liberal arts college. I can get so many. I had one-on-one, like I said, with professors. There was opportunities that were open for me, but it must not as strong in biomedical research as I wanted to. So getting opportunities, setting your application, like I'm first year straight from Zimbabwe, and I want to get into a PhD program 4 years from now. It's not starting at the end. It's not starting in my 4th year to say, okay, I'm applying for a PhD. It's not going to work. And for some people, it's before they even get into the undergraduate program. Some US students are already in some science, technology, and engineering, mathematics programs, preparing them for that PhD, for that track. So it's competitive. So you need a little bit of a runway. So while you're doing your undergraduate, for those who are in undergraduate degrees, I would say get opportunities to be an intern to research institutions. Those who are already in the US, there are so many research summer opportunities, and that's one of the things that I did. So from the very first summer, I had other international students. They're like, well, you want to go to an Ivy League. Why don't you look on those Ivy League institutions to work in a lab with a professor? And also we are going to be with other students from other institutions. So that's every single summer, and you use I'm using terms that maybe Annot will be talking about later. it's curricular practical training. So it's not taking away from my actual like training that after I graduate, but it's part of it. They build it into the programs. So do what you can to bolster your application from day one for that PhD program. Connecting with professors in the different institutions, someone like Simba said, even when you're going to your PhD, who's going to just be the one who's going to attest to your abilities to apply for the PhD program. So this is for research focus. As I said, I am not doing a PhD, but there was a time when I was working in that route, and probably these opportunities, these research experiences also bolstered my application for my master's program and my PhD, my Doctor of Public Health application. For those who are not in the US, there are amazing research institutions in whatever country you are in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria, in your school. Work with a professor who's doing research, and that is going to like build your portfolio. Write academic, be a contributing author on some of these articles, and work with these professors. It's building it wherever you are. If there's so much competition in Nigeria, what in ECOWAS? What are other countries? What is going on in Senegal? Can you go there and get yourself into a research internship while you are there? So starting, I would say, begin with the end in mind. It's going to be something that really bolsters your application. And I saw in the chat where someone's like, oh, what about your age? I am 38 years old. I started my DRPH at 35. And this is talking about the difference of why you are doing this. I did the Doctor of Public Health program because I wanted to level up in my career. I wanted to be like contribute, like be a thought leader in the field of public health and the positions that I needed. I remember applying, I was looking at opportunities to apply for different jobs, and I was like, I need to level up. I do not have a medical degree, I do not have a PhD, but what are opportunities that are there? And this was the perfect program for me. So yes, there's opportunities for graduate study, and you can look, again, it's your research, what works for you, and several institutions, but for me, the Harvard program was the best, and I gave my all to it. And another thing is, for those who are not starting at the undergraduate level, if you're coming from abroad, you can come in and start as a master's degree program in that institution that you want to do to be competitive for the PhD program. Do a research assistantship while you're doing your master's. And sometimes it's another year or two while you're building these relationships with professors. They see who you are, the expertise that you bring, and then you'll be more competitive for the PhD program. So some nuggets, and I'm sure there'll be more Annot will be sharing as we move forward.
Amazing. Thank you for that. That's very comprehensive. And you started us on the issue of extracurricular activities. And as I share my last question to the panel before we read the Q&A from everybody, I know somebody who was also very active, Dalumuzi. I want to understand how you navigated, that while you were at the college in the United States, how you just navigated being able to position yourself to really benefit from extracurricular activities. I know that you were a teacher, a teaching assistant, for leadership courses while you're an undergrad teaching graduate students at Harvard. What advice do you have, for students around proactively, seeking out these kinds of extracurricular opportunities? And why is it even important?
Sure. Thank you very much, Yedza. I'll actually answer this from, for lack of a better word, to use a philosophical perspective and from a practical perspective. So the philosophical aspect is really asking yourself deeply, why do you do what you do in general? And why do you want to go to Harvard or, to be in these kinds of institutions? And the more in touch we are with the deeper why, and I know this goes into conversations around purpose, etc. But the more in touch with a deeper why you are doing what you do and why you want what you want, it helps clarify a lot of things. And I'll connect this to what admissions officers look for. In fact, it gets to a point when admissions officers are considering applicants, and there are some applicants who they say it would be such an honor and a privilege for this person to be associated with Harvard, right? Because your why is so deep and is so strong that whether you get admitted to Harvard or not, you're still going to do great things, you know? And that's exactly who Harvard wants to admit. The people who they've got such a strong sense of purpose and such strong determination that even if they got a rejection from Harvard, Harvard one day is going to be like, we should have given this person a place to attend our university. And I'll sort of like use very specific examples. Marshall, I remember Marshall, I first met Marshall, and I just want to make the point about this deeper why. I first met Marshall when I'd been admitted to Harvard, and I was working. He was my boss. To this day, we still call each other Mr. Boss. He was my boss, and I was getting ready to go to Harvard, starting off in August. And we would go the lengths and breadths of our part of the country where we were working, looking to find scholarship students, right? And he wanted to go to Harvard, but he had such a deep why. Like, he wanted to provide opportunity to other young people who otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity. And the thing is, whether or not Marshall got into Harvard or didn't get into Harvard, he would still be doing great things, right? And so it actually gets to a point where, for luck, I don't know, it doesn't always work out that way, but we're like, literally, they're like, you will be doing us a favor by accepting our offer for you to come to our university. So just like bottom line is just have a really strong why, strong sense of determination and purpose, and Harvard becomes a channel and a pathway towards fulfilling that deeper why and that deeper purpose. And that connects to sort of like what you talked about, which is once you get admitted and making the most of opportunities, is that, I navigated Harvard because of my own deeper why. I ended up being a teaching assistant. Literally, I was 22, and my youngest student, who I was in my sort of like teaching assistant group was, I'm not kidding you, 30. And my oldest student was 58, and he was a former minister of defense for Ethiopia. Like, I was 22. What was I doing teaching a former minister of defense of Ethiopia who about leadership? He commanded armies. And then he shows up to Harvard to be taught leadership by a 22-year-old. But how I got there is because I was so interested in leadership and so interested in the education space that I took a course for no credit at graduate level because I was just hungry for that knowledge and for that experience. And then from there, I was like, took my next course. Eventually, professors were like, this kid actually really believes in what he's doing and is really interested and would make a good teaching assistant. So we're going to offer him a job. But if I wasn't from the very onset driven by something that transcended the very specific role of a very specific opportunity I was going after, I might not have got those opportunities in the first place. So I guess, like, in summary, once it comes to navigating college, making the most of those opportunities, whether you're from Africa or not, it's about what am I, what's driving me? What's my deeper why? And how am I going to contribute in a way that's so unique that, I am the person who is best placed to contribute in that way. And it's just going to shine in your application, and admissions officers are going to notice that, and you'll greatly increase your chances of getting an offer. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. This has been such an enriching conversation. This has been really phenomenal. And I've just been also going through the Q&A section. I see a lot of questions, but some of your questions were already answered, as we were going through the panel. And so we're just going to pick a handful of questions and just give an opportunity to our panelists to give their thoughts on some of the questions that are coming from the audience. I'll start with one question that's around GMAT or GREs. The question says that I have experience in various industries in Zimbabwe, currently unemployed. Is it possible to enroll in a graduate school without GMAT or GRE? Which university have this facility? And any one of you panelists can feel free to jump in. I think Dalumuzi spoke a bit about this, so maybe I can hand this question to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I think a lot of it is really about increasing your chances of getting an admission. And so it probably helps you more than it hurts you to have a good, SAT or GRE or GMAT score. And, you know, I think as everybody has said on the panel, you know, the more you apply yourself, it just helps you to stand out more. So, you know, I guess, like, you know, if you do the GMAT, I forget what the scales are now, but you get a very good score, it will look quite favorably. And I think in part why the standardized tests exist is because, you know, people will be applying from literally 100 different countries. And, you know, what a 2-1 means in Zimbabwe is not something that somebody sitting in Cambridge, Massachusetts might understand. But what they do understand is that, like, a good jury score, you know, is comparable to something that they're seeing from applicants from, you know, different university systems, etc. So I think, you know, there are lots of universities that don't require those, and in many cases they're optional. But I generally always encourage people to take the tests and really put their best foot forward, because it helps more than it hurts when you have a good score.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Dalamuzi.
Tsietsa, do
Yes.
you mind if I add to that as well? I think there's some schools that are biased towards some of those tests. So you've got to be very careful that it might say, specifically MBA programs, they might say it's optional, or they might say GMAT or GRE, but they have a bias towards GMAT, especially at the MBA level, or at other graduate school programs, they might say test optional, but they might still have an old school admissions committee that really wants to see that standardized test so that they can assess their applicants. So be careful, although some say on their websites optional, really understand if the past candidates that have gone in, what did the majority of them have? Was it truly optional, or did a lot of them have to go through the tests? Sorry, Tsietsa.
Thanks for bringing that point, Simba, very important point. I'll move on to the second question. And this is a question on, it says, as an undergraduate applicant, can I write cold emails to professors who have NSF funding to help me gain admission into the school while promising to be of help in their research work? I think I'll direct this to you, Tatenda. You shared a lot about funding and, you know, engaging with professors.
I think absolutely. In most of the applications that I have written, or my personal statements, and or when I'm helping people with their applications, is to identify some professors that you would like to work with. And for me, one of the professors ended up being my advisor. And what helps is these cold call emails. Again, it's not just oh, can you help me? This is me, and I would like to work with you. It's about sharing your profile. Who are you? What positions? Why should they choose you, or why should you be in their lab? It does not work automatically that you're going to get funding. In many schools, they'll tell you when you're even looking for funding, they're like, well, you might not have funding now. You can look for funding for your first semester and your first year, and when you come, there'll be research assistantship positions. So having these relationships with professors ahead of time, it can position you for some of these research assistantship positions. In my program, I had someone who already on a grant with a professor because they were excited because of the unique experience that they had, to say, yes, we're going to have you. You can start working with me when you come, and we can work on this application together. So if you have experience, the professors you want to work with, and many times they want to work with Stella students from Africa, reach out, include them in your application as well. And sometimes maybe the admissions office is asking, oh, this student they say they want to work with you. What is this about? For PhDs, totally different. You need to identify these professors anyway, but I'm talking for master students who are looking for funding in general. And yes, that will be helpful.
That's very helpful advice there, Tatenda. So do not be afraid, you know, to reach out to professors. Do not be, one thing I learned, you know, when I came to the US is that you have to ask. I came from a background where it's very difficult to ask, you know, coming from Africa, coming from Zimbabwe, but like my American friends would tell me, Chesa, if you don't ask, you get nothing. So feel free to do that. I'm gonna do two more questions from the panel, and this next from the Q&A section. And this next question, I'll pose it to you, Adora. There's something, I think there are about two questions that are talking about the issue of age. One question was like, I am turning 35 this year, have been working in the banking sector. Is age a deterrent to get admission into an Ivy League? And then another question was, I'm 26 years old. I'm coming from a not very privileged background. I've done a lot of work training farmers, teaching in secondary schools, but is my age a barrier to getting an undergrad scholarship placement overseas? So over to you, Adora.
Hi, so no, I don't think age is a barrier. For the 35-year-old, I mean, I had people in my class in Harvard who were in their 20s and those who were in their 50s and 60s. But again, it depends on of course, I did a graduate program, so that's different, right? And I believe he or she might be referring to a graduate program. Also worked in the bank many years and started my application to Harvard maybe around the same age, or maybe just a couple years younger. So no, it's not a deterrent at all. I think, as I said in my opening, just apply. For the 26-year-old, what did he or she also sounds like they have very interesting experience around farming and agriculture. Again, use this to your advantage and tell your story, depending on the program or the course that you're applying to. For me, I didn't take the GRE because it was optional. It's dangerous. It can be tricky. But because I had this vast wealth of experience in private sector, Nigerian government, there's a lot, I was working in oil and gas, there's a lot of controversy. My personal statement was deep, and my why was clear. It's very competitive. But I believe that because of that depth and breadth of experience that I had, I was able to compete favorably amongst the people that were applying. Very, very competitive. So, but for the 26-year-old, age is not a deterrent as well. Your work already sounds interesting for what a lot of Ivies are looking for in your field. And there's a whole DEI revolution that is going on. I feel everybody needs to ride that wave as much as you can, because I believe that there are quotas now, and things have to be balanced out. So if you're African female, you're already smelling of roses and looking good, both at the college level and at the maybe grad school level at all. So as well. So just think in that direction and then use some of these movements to your advantage. Again, be authentic in your application, but also be very strategic, because those admissions officers have boxes that they tick.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Adora. And I will come to you, Simba, with the last question, which is talking about AI. This revolution of AI is interesting. And the question says, what are the implications of using artificial intelligence in applications? Tools like ChatGPT, what are the do's and don'ts here? Simba, over to you.
So it's all still new, and a lot of admissions committees don't have the technology to detect whether you've used AI or not. However, it's important to understand that when you sound like what other applicants sound like, which is what the prompts and stuff will produce for you in AI, then to Dalumuzi's point, that strong sense of why does not come across because you sound like other applicants. So you have to be very careful, maybe to outline ideas. I am pro AI tools, but you've got to be very careful. And remember that this is an essay that requires, 1,500, 2,000 words, whatever it is. And if you're not willing to put in the effort for that, then that's a different thing. But you might also have a family and you might have other commitments that are pulling you away. But I would still recommend personalizing your statements as much as you can, because then that's how you produce that strong sense of why. And remember, AI, no matter which AI platform you're using, still uses general language, and admissions committee, if others in that application pool use the same general languages, you're giving yourself less of a chance to get in.
Absolutely. This has been a phenomenal panel. And as we are drawing closer to the end of the panel, I would like to give our incredible panelists just a minute for you guys to share your concluding remarks and your call to action to the audience. So I'm going to start with you, Tatenda, and then we go to Simba, Adora, and then finally, Dalamuzi. Over to you, Tatenda.
Just thank you so much to Chiedza and the Annot team for just hosting such an incredible event, and just the vision that is here. I think my concluding remarks are going to be the same. Do not doubt yourself. You have got what it takes. And many times the deterrent to coming to these institutions are sometimes ourselves in, oh, how am I going to navigate it? How am I even going to go? Go on that website, get that information, do the research, do the background work by yourself. And there's always going to be people who are there to support you. It might be alumni associations, like Adora said, but there's so many people who are in these institutions who, if you send a message, are more than happy to help. LinkedIn is great. You can see who's in these institutions. You can see what programs that have done. And if, for instance, someone asks me about an MPA at the Kennedy School, and I'll be like, I could help you, but I know Chiedza. She was there and she excelled, and would make those connections. So do not be afraid, leap in, believe in yourself, and you'll do well, and be persistent. Persistency is the key. We're talking about some of us, we might not have shared experiences of maybe you've applied the first time, and then maybe the next year it's when you get accepted, and you've learned from that experience. Sometimes it's asking the admissions office to say, what was it in my application? What can I do to improve my application for the next round? And that is another way that you can bolster your application. So I'm also happy to share. You can find me on LinkedIn to share some nuggets as we go along, but excited, and don't be afraid. You've got what it takes.
Thank you, Tatenda. This is amazing. Simba, over to you.
Doing what Amanda said earlier, people help people that help themselves. And one of the ways you can do that is truly, like we're saying over and over and over, is doing that deep research. One of the sentences as you're crafting a cold email or whatever you're crafting an email to an alumni is to say, in doing my research, I have found that XYZ. That goes a long way and shows that you've actually made the effort to look through the program or look through the scholarship or the fellowship. That goes a long way. And then lastly, there are over 2,500 universities in the US. And let me also point out, there are over 1,200 community colleges. We are only speaking about one right now, but please understand that there are many options. And Harvard could be your long-term option, but you could have to start somewhere else in the short term.
Amazing. Adora.
Yes, Simba, I'm with you on that 100%, right? There are other great schools. I had opportunities to go to, fully funded, by the way. But you know, it's also good to know your why and the purpose. But all these schools are great, right? Don't just apply. I mean, I think that'll be my final statement. I do want to touch on someone who talked about leaving your family behind or getting support to go with your family. Usually going with family to these expensive schools makes it even more expensive, unless you can't avoid it. I had to leave my 3 kids at the time that I went, and it was a very difficult decision to do that. But at the time, because of funding, I had to sort of navigate my family situation and things like that. So again, people are applying at different levels. Always think about family, because if your mind is somewhere else and you're in these institutions, especially because it's so competitive, then you might lose focus. And I think that it's important to consider everything else that's happening around you, because it is a very big decision to go and spend all that money. And also think about what you want to do when you leave, because usually you can go into depression when you've come from a high of being in the Ivy League and getting all this exposure. And then you head back to, and you're comparing yourself to all these amazing people that I'm talking to on the panel right now. And then you're like, oh, so what next? You know, so always think about the other side of the Ivy League as well when you leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Adora. And finally, Dalamuzi, your final words.
Great, thank you. I think for me, the final word sort of like linked to the very purpose why Annot was started and exists, to create those connections between US and Africa, the continent, but because we've got people from elsewhere, with other emerging markets. And it's, I'm calling in from Johannesburg, South Africa, and these opportunities have helped me to contribute more to the continent. And like this is like very real. So I run an alternative credit scoring company where we're using alternative data to build credit scores. I would not have the insight to build an alternative credit scoring company if I hadn't gone to the US and been at Harvard and just understood what the credit scoring industry looks like there. And I think my parting shot is I'm really glad that more people are interested in studying in the US, whether it's Harvard or elsewhere. But let's do all of this so that we can think about how best we can contribute to the transformation of our very immediate families, our communities, our countries, and our continent. And I'm really excited for how Annot, really plays a pivotal role to that. And I hope many people from this call will one day, when they're on CNN or BBC, say it all started with a webinar organized by Annot. Thank you.
Amazing. I love that. Wonderful. A round of applause for our panelists. This has just been phenomenal. Such a mind-blowing, informative webinar. Thank you to our panelists. And, I encourage everybody to follow them on LinkedIn and, engage with them. They'll point you to the resources. They'll share their ideas. And this has just been a phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing all these incredible nuggets. And I hope that each and every person who is listening in will take it upon themselves to just apply, to act. Now, I'd like to call up a very dear person for us as Annot, one of our founding directors, who is also a graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Kenneth Asher, who will give us our final remarks and next steps. Welcome, Ken, and over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chizza. Thank you, everyone. Wow. What an amazing webinar, first webinar. And hopefully everyone is feeling fulfilled, feeling a sense of hope, feeling that you're going to be supported. First, a little bit about me. Where do I start? We talked about purpose, and I hope this stays in your spirit as you think about what your next move would be, either studying abroad in the US or Europe, or even locally. Think about your purpose and your why. I fortunately have been connected to Chizza, Marshall, Simba, and now to each of you because of a sense of my why that has led me. Had I known many of these panelist members, I probably would have gotten accepted to Harvard the first time I applied. I applied to Harvard 4 times, and I wanted to give up each time. Each time I wanted to give up, but I stayed rooted in my why. And what was my why? My why was you. I wanted to do, and I want to do the work in Africa to help develop and build young minds, to build infrastructure, to build hope, to lift our people up. That's the thing that drives me each and every day. But what I've learned over the last 5 years, 6 years in my journey is that I can't do it alone. And so being connected to Chizza and Marshall and Simba and now the panelist members and you, we can make an amazing impact. And I'm just so moved and my spirit is so filled right now. And I just want to thank our amazing panelists, Adora, Simba, Tatenda, Talamuzi, for lending your expertise and living your lived experiences on this important topic of navigating Ivy Leagues. Your participation has enriched us with practical advice and encouragement and have contributed greatly to the success of this webinar. Thank you for your service. Oh, thank you to our attendees From all around the world, thank you for joining and being a part of this first session. It is with you in mind that we collaborate, that we connect and brainstorm on establishing resources to support you along your journeys. We are here to be a bridge and a light for your development and your growth. It is because of you we serve. You are a dream realized. To our hosts, Chiza and Marshall, thank you for leading with your hearts and trusting that many hands make light work, and that our collective vision of strengthening our people are being realized right now. As we close, we have another treat for each of you because there are so many opportunities beyond Ivy Leagues. And this particular next treat that we're going to offer really speaks to my heart and my soul. Next month, we will be hosting an event to introduce you to historically Black colleges and universities that we believe will help also develop you along your journeys. Because these institutions were designed specifically with you in mind. These institutions have been developed and supported many Black leaders since the late 1800s. Some of these leaders you may have heard about, such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a graduate of Morehouse College in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Nigeria's first president in 1963. He was also a classmate of U.S. Supreme Court Justice, the first Black African Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall. They both attended Lincoln University based in Pennsylvania. And one of my favorites, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister of Ghana, the first nation to gain its independence. He also graduated from Lincoln University. Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, Malawi's first president, he graduated from Meharry Medical School in Nashville, Tennessee. But get this, they aren't the only Black leaders that have matriculated from historically Black colleges and universities. These institutions to this very day continue to serve and support and develop leaders such as yourself, who go on to make a difference in their families, in their communities, and in the world. For example, right now, the Vice President of the United States of America graduated from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't want to give you all the good nuggets that we have available for you next month. We want you to tune in because there are institutions that want to serve you, that want to help you, that want to support you. Remember, opportunities are connected to people. And there are Black people, African people that are here in the US right now, waiting to embrace you. So as many of our panelist members have stated, remember your why, apply, and we are here to support you. So I want to give you additional context. I'm excited about what's ahead for you. We want to see you next month. So please sign up for our upcoming Navigating HBCUs, Historically Black Colleges and Universities. The webinar will take place on April 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, as we close, please complete a brief 3 questions survey that will pop up at the end. This will help us continue to serve you and provide you with content that will help you elevate, help you connect, help you and build. Lastly, look out for the launch of our mentorship program to help students apply to U.S. colleges and universities. I will close with that and turn it back over to Chiza. Thank you, Chiza.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. That is such a powerful, powerful way to end. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. This marks the end of our webinar. Please take a moment to fill out our survey. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. This is the end of our webinar, and I just want to extend thanks to you. I know we still have 23 attendees that are still leaving, but just wanted to take this time to thank you personally for such an incredible webinar.
Great. No. Thank you, Chiedza, for your vision and for making it happen. Really appreciate it. This is great.
Amazing. I hope that we'll get a chance to continue to stay in touch, and may the Lord bless you. Thank you for your time, and we'll be keeping in touch with you.
Thank you so much, Chiedza. Thank you, team. And it was great to see everybody here. It's great. Great.
Amazing. All right. Have a
Very
wonderful
inspirational.
We'll be in touch, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks
Just
for your
kids,
tea as well.
just okay.
Next
Go
time
ahead.
I'll show up in a suit and a shirt and a tie.
But you were looking sharp, Dalumuzi.
Yeah. I noticed all the guys were fall out, so like, okay, next time, I'll level it up.
By the way, for the benefit of Adaora Entertainer, I never knew about Harvard University. Dalumuzi introduced me to Harvard Kennedy School, and the first thing I told him was,
Wow.
I'm not Harvard material. Dalumuzi, I am not Harvard material. I supplemented to pay through my high school. I did not go the traditional route. My first degree was through correspondence. It was, a life filled with difficulties. But because of the strong sense of why, I ended up getting into Harvard on a full scholarship. I graduated zero debt from Harvard. They actually reached out to me when they admitted me and said, Marshall, yeah, congratulations, you've been admitted. How much do you have to pay? And this was an $80,000 bill. And I told them, I have $100. In my bank account.
Wow, that is amazing.
The next time the school said, it's okay, Marshall, we want you here. You
Wow.
earned your way here. So they paid 100% of my funding. I came with my family and my kids. In addition to that,
Wow.
they also paid me, they were paying me about $2,500 stipend just for upkeep. So it was just the doing of God.
Honestly,
I
that's
hope this is-
inspiring.
Mhm. I hope this is part of the recording so people can hear this as
Yeah.
Should have
And I
said
mean,
it
like, it's
because
amazing.
that's inspiring.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you are, opening up that opportunity for other people, because a lot of people, it's just they're like, where do you even start? But you've sort of like charted the pathway, and now people can know how to start.
Absolutely. And I hope that, you guys you're not part of us. You help us, find ways of like really structuring this in a way that we can support and scale, how the information can go to everybody else. And I think just doing this, what is a starting point, a lot of people have gained. I had a one-on-one chat with Dalumuzi, and he was like, yes, you can, but today you were able to tell hundreds of people, just because of technology. So as we continue to think about how we can use technology to provide the information and to the resources to others, please let us know, and how we can support what you're already doing, because I know all of you are supporting, people in one or two different ways. So please, you are officially our Annot ambassadors.
Accepted. Hand holding is so important, because I don't know how you felt, but I didn't feel like I was going to get in. And yes, I had all this great experience, and I'd heard about Harvard. Well, my husband has said to me, there's nobody that sees you get into that admission and will not want to help you in some way, right? So that really encouraged me, and that's sort of that's my selling point. You're paying for a lot of stuff and education. You're paying for a network, and that network has taken me, and I wish I said that earlier on, but that network has taken me places. It's unbelievable how clannish some of these IVs can be. The network is what you really pay for, and it's been great. And my daughter wants to go to Harvard undergrad, actually, Dalumuzi. So you have to figure that one out.
Yeah, so let me know when they need personal statement support and everything. Yeah, yeah. How old is she?
She's 16 this July.
Oh, okay, so like literally next year or the year after, she'll be
Literally.
wow. Wow. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've sent invites on LinkedIn, etc. So I'm sure we'll be in touch. Yeah.
That would be great. That would be great.
Wonderful.
Cool. So
Fantastic.
thank you so much, everyone.
And
Thank you.
Taten, I've been thinking about a PhD, so maybe I'll call you, but I'm
Me
so
too.
scared.
Girl,
Dr. Tatenda.
Dr. Tatenda.
yes, soon come, soon come.
Amen.
I'm actually in Orlando, Florida for my family vacation. So I just carried my jacket and my shirt and my tie for this webinar, but I'm so glad it turned out well. And thank you so much, guys.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, guys.
So
Excellent.
heartwarming. I'll send you guys
Amazing.
a group picture so you can remember this moment and information maybe next week. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.